Hi, this is Katie Johnson. Today I'm going to talk you through how I made this card. The first thing I want to point out is that while it's an Easter card, it's not made with an Easter set of products. So I just brought in the current catalog so I could show you the set of dies that I'm using. I'm going to be using the Birds and More dies, and the reason that I chose them is because I wanted to use both the eggs that you see down here and this bit of foliage. I know it's hard to see in the catalog, so I've die cut these pieces so we can look at them. Here are the die cut pieces from the Birds and More die set. So you can see that it cuts two bird shapes and gives us the feet. It's got a little heart, which is nice. It's got a flower. Actually, it's got several things that can function as flowers that you could put on this leafy spray if you wanted. And this is very interesting. It cuts the hole. It cuts a hole so that you could have it peek through. We've got the nest, and then we've got two more birds. Now the birds up here are intended to be die cuts. The birds here are actually framelits, as is the nest. And here's what I mean by framelits. This is the matching stamp set, so you can see that you could stamp the nest and then you could die cut it. You could stamp these birds and then you'd be able to die cut them. These birds are a different shape than the stamps. These are not intended to cut out the stamped images. These are standalone die cuts, and these are framelits. However, I'm not actually using the stamps on this project. I'm just using the die cut for the eggs, and I'm using the spray over here for the wreath. So there's my project, but better look at how it was constructed. These are the die cut pieces that you get when you cut the flowers, and you'll notice, or the leaves, and you'll notice that they all kind of have that same curve to them. You could certainly take the piece and flip it over and use the other side. Or the other thing that I did on this project was I simply cut it up into lots of little pieces that I could then layer over each other. The curvature on this is much too broad a curve to make the wreath that I'm going for here, and so I cut them into smaller pieces and layered them on top of each other to construct something that gave your eye a circular view. Let's talk about the background for just a moment. If you look at this background, you can see the wood grain in there. We'll pull it back out again, so you can see all this wonderful detail of the branch, the plank, that when you would have cut the piece of wood, and you've got that texture embossing on there. So the way that I did that, it was texture embossed with the Pinewood Planks embossing folder. Now this is a 6x6 folder, which is nice, because that way you can take this pattern that clearly has an up and down to it, and you could put your paper in either direction. So I could have had those planks going horizontally or vertically. I have the versatility with a 6x6 folder like this. To get this extra definition on here, this is embossed already. You can see the embossing on here. To get the definition, I sponged on some color. Now, when you're doing sponging like this, you want to have good control of that sponge. And so for the right tool for this job was a sponge dauber. And I just pick up a little bit of the ink and just go lightly over the surface. And you can see that detail start to come out. Now, don't worry for something like this if you end up getting that ink a little bit in between the lines instead of just resting on the surface, because this is going to give you the natural look of wood. So you can see right now what's happening with this sponge is the sponge is just going over the surface of these raised areas, and the ink is getting caught on the raised areas. It's giving a wonderful definition to the lines. It's also giving a very natural look to the piece of wood. Now this is a small surface, so I've got pretty good control to be just on top of the lines, but there are places where if I press a little bit too hard that it's getting on the paper in between the lines, and that's just fine for a project like this because it's going to just add all the more natural look to it so that you could see what I'm talking about with these leaves. By taking the leaves and trimming them up into smaller sections, you can begin to lay them out in a pattern that your eye is going to just connect and turn into a circular shape. So then to adhere the pieces on, you're going to probably want to be using liquid glue. And just put a tiny, tiny little dot on the end of each of the leaf surfaces, because at this point it's got a raised surface that it has to try to attach to. You see me use my Take Your Pick tool on lots of things with the pointy end. I also like this tacky end because it lets me pick up things that my fingernails don't want to grab onto. Give a little bit of thought to it. You can cover up some of those ends, but realize that when you come back, you're going to be filling in some of these ends, covering up the loose ends with the eggs as well. All right, at this time I have my wreath pretty full. There's going to be a bow down in here filling in some of this empty area, and then many of these other places around here are going to get filled in with the eggs. Let's get the card, we're going to start assembling it. I do like the fresh look of having this kind of card sitting on a white card base. Alright, so at this point, this card could actually be for any type of wreath on a door that I wanted to make. The thing that's going to turn it into an Easter card is having these glittery eggs. Let's talk about the eggs for just a moment and the color and where that comes from, because I said that I wasn't using the stamp that was in the coordinating stamp set. Instead, what I did was I die cut them out of this rainbow glimmer paper. This rainbow glimmer paper is wonderful. I love the shading that you can get back and forth. It's really pretty. And then I'm just going to show you one thing that I do in terms of storage. So they come 12 by 12, and then you always end up with small little extra pieces left over, and I don't throw them away. I save them all. Now this is also a product that Stampin' Up sells. This is a 6 by 8 open top envelope, little cellophane bag. And I stick all my little pieces in here because then it's very easy to pull them all out instead of trying to stick my hand back into this plastic piece and try to find the pieces I want. And then I can actually save all these little scraps and reuse them. So you can see what I did here. I had apparently previously used this to cut some balloons. I see the bottom of my balloon punch here, and then I just used that little piece to cut out one of the yellow eggs. I will put links to all of this product in the description. Alright, the other thing that's going to make this an Easter card, besides seeing these sparkly little eggs on here, is we're going to put on a sentiment that actually says Happy Easter. Now, I'm not going to stamp on top of this wood grain look. That would just get lost in there. Rather than stamping and then die cutting a piece, I'm actually going to use some word dies. This is another stamp set that Stampin' Up sells right now. This is called the Word Wishes dies, and you can see that it's got a variety of fairly thick sentiment dies. Then there's a happy in here and an Easter. So I have die cut these words already. There's a lot of height to these leaves on here. I don't know how well you can see it in profile, but there's a lot of variation in the height, and so the choice of adhesive becomes an issue for how to hold on these die cut words. Now for the eggs, I've got mini dimensionals. That's not many as in lots, that's mini as in tiny. Stampin' Up sells regular size dimensionals. Here, let's zoom this in. So these are the regular size dimensionals that Stampin' Up sells, and then you can see side by side, here's the mini version of it. And that regular dimensional would actually be too big for the eggs, so I definitely needed to use the mini version. These, by the way, I use these dimensionals all the time to add dimension and interest to a project. They come 3 to a sheet, and they're I think $5, so I keep 2 or 3 packages of these on my desk all the time, and I've always got a package of the minis on my desk as well. Alright, so here's where you see that take your pick tool coming in. So it's really easy to just stick that point in there and pull the backing off so that I can attach one of the eggs. The point tool is also good for putting your sticky thing on the point, and then you can bring it in and choose where you're going to layer it. So for example, right here where there is a little bit of an end of one of those places where I cut the leaf, that's just easy to cover up then by putting one of the eggs right on top. So nobody's going to see all those places where you've got the ends of the leaves cut off. Alright, so I needed the dimensional to raise up the egg because it's sitting on this varying height surface where the lumpiness is from all these overlapping leaves. I need something similar for the die cut words. Now here is the Easter, and here is my happy. And let me just point out another product that Stampin' Up! Sells. We sell what's called adhesive foam sheets. So this is like a giant dimensional over here. The whole thing is an adhesive sheet. And what I can do is I cut off a piece, and then I pulled the backing off of one side because it's double sticky on both sides, and put my paper on. And now I can take my die cut and I can run it through the machine. And you'll notice that the backing is partly coming off on here, but I've got to punch the rest of the backing off. Now the centers of the P and the Y came right out in my die, so that makes life very easy. There's still a little piece stuck in the end of the H down here, so I'm going to need to take my take your pick tool and dig that out. So you definitely have to give it the once over, inspecting it from both sides before you lay it on. Alright, so this now, the foam will allow it to get adhered every place where I set it down. And that foam and the stickiness of it is also going to help secure the leaves to the surface. And now I'm ready to place this. And then we can come back and put our eggs on. For a finishing touch, I'm going to add a bow. To match all the glitter and glitz from those eggs, we're going to put on a little bit of metallic edged ribbon. To get a perfect bow, I like to use a fork. This is a meat fork, and I like it because of the width. Let me show you how to do this. This is so slick and easy, you're just going to be amazed and wowed. So where my hands are right now, this is the back side of the bow. This will be the front side of the bow, and the outside edges of the meat fork are where the two loops of the bow will be. And what I need is one more maneuvering of the ribbon to create the thing in the middle, that loop in the middle. It's going to turn my single big loop into the two loops of the bow. So this is the front, and now in the back I just tie a knot. Isn't that slick? So there's the front of my bow. Just slip it off and then trim off the ends. Okay, so at this point the bow looks good from the front, but it may not behave nicely. So in other words, this thing, the ribbon that's going around, is nice and flat on the front, but these things, they don't want to lay. So we're going to attach the whole thing on with glue dots, more than one, to hold those little stray ends in position. Right, here's my glue dots, and I'm going to put one in the center of the back to hold the knot itself on. And then we will put it on my project, and then we will look at where these ends lay, and if they don't lay where I want them to, I'm just going to come in with a couple of extra glue dots and hold them down in position. So we're going to make this one. There is our project. You can see how all those little pieces of the foliage cut and placed can turn into something that your eye will see as a circle. And the glitter and glitz from that glimmer paper in real life, oh wow, it is so sparkly. And it's just helped by the extra metallic sparkle of that ribbon. So isn't that fun to take a set that's not intended as an Easter set, but to turn it into something that can work just beautifully for that occasion? I hope this gave you some ideas. If it did, please give it a thumbs up. If you feel that more from me would be useful, then definitely subscribe to my channel so you get notifications when I come on with future videos.